Okay, so close your eyes. Now imagine you're walking out of McWhorter and you decide to stop in Potter Hall lobby because let's say you've never seen it before. So you take a right, you walk down that path, and then boom, a 30-foot oak tree shoots out of the ground. Picture that. Okay, that's pretty weird, but then you notice something even weirder. You see your grandmother in the tree, and she's eating cookies. And then you notice beside her is Shia LaBeouf and Miley Cyrus. Just picture that. Okay, open your eyes. Now, that was pretty weird, but hopefully by the end of my speech, you'll understand why I shared that illustration, and you'll understand a little something about the memory palace and just how important our memory is. Because who we are is the collection of what we can remember. So having a trained memory is really important. And the memory palace helps us get there. And so with the memory palace, I want to hit on three main points. I want to hit on what it is, I want to hit on where it came from, and I want to hit on how you can do it. Alright, so let's jump in. What is it? So a simple definition of the memory palace is it's a memorization technique that allows us to remember large chunks of information both efficiently and effectively. So what does this look like? Well, basically, if you want to remember something, you take a snapshot of it, and then you put it in a story that's familiar to you, that you can walk through. Okay, so what does this mean? Alright, so close your eyes one more time. Now, let's say you need groceries. Alright, so you need milk and you need bread. Alright, so you're sitting in the chair you're currently sitting in, and now imagine Usain Bolt runs up and pours milk all over you. You are just completely drenched in milk. Alright, that's pretty gross. So you decide to get up, you go to the bathroom. So you walk out that door right there, you're headed to the bathroom, and then Gordon Ramsay, the Iron Chef, runs up, holds 2 pieces of bread over your ear, and says, "You're an idiot sandwich." Just picture that. Okay, open your eyes. Now, that's a story that's very visual that you can walk through. And that's essentially what the memory palace achieves to do. Okay, so now that we've kind of talked about what it is, let's talk about where it came from. Alright, so for you Sherlock fans out there, you might know it as the Mind Palace. For you ancient Rome fans out there, you might know it as the method of Loki. Alright, so the method of Loki was first discussed over 2,000 years ago by this guy. His name's Cicero. Cicero was a counselor to the king, which basically means that he gives him advice and that he gives all of his speeches for him. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, basically, some of these speeches were 50 to 100 pages long, and Cicero gave them all by memory. And he kind of got this idea from A Tale of Simonides, and he wrote a book called On the Ideal Order, and where he recounts the tale of Simonides. Now, Simonides was a poet, and as most poets do, they go to house parties and deliver their set. And so as Simonides finished up his set, he left the party, and then he heard a crash. He turned around, and the entire house was leveled. Everyone in the house had died. But before Simonides left, he had taken a mental picture, and he had noticed where every single person was sitting. That way when their loved one showed up, Simonides was able to guide them to where their loved ones were sitting. And this tale kind of inspired Cicero to really start thinking about the connection between visualization and memorization. And he's not the only one inspired by this tale. Modern researchers have actually deeply studied this technique. And what they found is pretty extraordinary. See, they found that it cuts the time of encoding from 35 seconds to 16 seconds. Alright, so what does this mean? Well, encoding is the process through which your brain sort of sorts through information and then memorizes it. And so it cuts it down from 35 seconds to 16 seconds, which effectively cuts the time it takes your brain to memorize something in half and the stress put on your brain. Furthermore, they've also found that it really helps kids with learning disabilities, which is a pretty profound impact. Alright, so now we've kind of talked about what it is and where it came from, but let's really dive in on how you can do it. Alright, close your eyes just one last time. Alright, so you're standing on your front lawn at your house back home. You walk up, you open the door, and you look to your right. And then you see a Christmas tree. And that reminds you of an illustration you want to say about a tree. Alright, so you kind of pan your head to the left, and then you see a hobo. And he's sitting on your couch, and he's whittling. And he's muttering to himself about a technique that he uses to whittle. But that reminds you, you want to mention how the memory palace is a memorization technique. Now that's pretty weird, so you decide to go take a nap. So you walk to your room, you open the door, and then you see Benedict Cumberbatch. And that reminds you, you want to briefly hit on the Mind Palace and Sherlock. So you push him out of the way, you get in bed, you pull up the covers, and then you turn over. And then you see a sumo wrestler screaming at you in Latin. And that reminds you, you want to talk about Cicero and the story of Simonides. So you get up, you get out of bed, You run out of the house because that's clearly not your house. And then you see Steve Urkel. And that reminds you want to talk about nerds who do research in cognitive neurobiology. All right, open your eyes. For those of you who weren't playing along, that gets me to right now in my speech. Now, the most important part about the memory palace is you have to be able to walk through. See, my house is familiar to me. And your house is probably familiar to you. And that's the most important part. It has to be familiar to you. Okay, so in conclusion, we've kind of hit on three things. We've hit on what the memory palace is. It's an ancient memorization technique from 2,000 years ago that's had profound impacts throughout history. And we've talked about kind of how you can do it. You can use it to memorize grocery lists, your social security number, phone numbers, and even a speech. And I hope you'll understand how important your memory is, because you are the collection of what you can remember. Now, for most of you, I don't think you memorized my speech, but I guarantee that each and every one of you knows who's sitting in that tree with your grandmother. Thank you.